It's all about printmaking.
It is.
Hey, Amy, all about printmaking with Phil and Amy. This is our podcast today, or our episode. I keep wanting to say that word, podcast.
You like podcasts, don't you?
But this episode, we're going to be dealing with, what did I say?
Intaglio.
Intaglio.
Mm-hmm.
And Intaglio is the kind of printmaking where we do what? You remember? We use a plate. And we etch into the plate.
Mm-hmm.
And when we ink and wipe off the ink settles in those little etch lines.
Grooves. Uh-huh.
And when we run it through the press, it picks up those lines to make the image.
All right.
That's Intaglio. I've been doing a little studying today. I went to a couple of websites to refamiliarize myself with some of the things that I've forgotten, like mezzotint and aquatint. And I never really got into mezzotint, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about that in just a minute.
Okay.
But last episode, we talked about relief,
Correct.
which was normally done on wood
Mm-hmm.
or linoleum,
Right.
which are soft, fairly soft media forms,
Mm-hmm.
matrix forms, because you have to carve into them. And usually you have to carve quite a bit of that material out.
Right.
As opposed to Intaglio, you're only carving the lines
Right.
that you're going to print. You're not carving out the excess like
Right.
you do
Mm-hmm. Correct.
on relief.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get right into it here. I brought with me today, which you can't see because this is strictly audio.
Okay.
But when I put this episode onto YouTube, now YouTube has a new feature where YouTube is basically video,
right.
but podcasts end up on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
if you're with a host, and the host will put your podcast onto all the different platforms.
Right.
And YouTube is one of the best known platforms, even though it's video. What you usually end up with a podcast is you've got the audio and a photograph.
Right.
And the photograph is just the same. It's just a static photograph through the whole audio.
I've seen that. Yeah.
So what I want to do is use this new feature on YouTube, where they have one of the playlists you can specify as a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and it has a lot of the features of a regular podcast. But what I'm going to do is take some photos of these things that I
Mm-hmm.
talk about.
Right.
And if someone wants to, may not be their normal hearing platform listening,
Right.
but they can go to YouTube and they can see some of the pictures that I put in there to
Mm-hmm.
go along with the dialogue.
So it'll be more of a show and tell, huh?
Yeah, more of a show and tell on YouTube.
Okay.
But on other platforms like Spotify or iHeartRadio,
Mm-hmm.
or those places where it's just audio.
Right. It's just tell.
Yeah, it's just talking. Talking.
We don't do that, do we?
Intaglio.
Yes, it is.
So, Amy, some of your comments sometimes just I got my mind on focused on bridging this gap for an episode. I've got this. It's a block I've got in my brain, and so when you answer me and say something
Uh-huh.
that I should be listening to and remarking on, I just go right by it.
Yeah, squirrel.
Yeah. So you've got to wave a flag or something when
Okay.
you comment and you want me to expound on that.
Response. Yes, I'll do that.
Otherwise, I'm thinking, I've got these notes here. I've got to follow this line. I got to,
Just breaking your focus all the time.
Yeah. Plus, I got to watch this clock over here on my recorder. But Intaglio.
Yes.
When I was in college and was experimenting with all the different forms of printmaking, Intaglio was the most interesting to me
Mm-hmm.
because my teacher, my instructor, was a very well-known, highly praised. I mean, he's got artwork. His prints are in National Gallery and
Wow.
all over the world, But Ken Kerslake, and he died of cancer about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
He was in his 80s.
Mm.
But Ken was into photo printmaking, and he had devised a method of his own. He invented this method of treating the plate, like that little plate you see there.
Mm-hmm.
He would take the zinc or copper plate, and he would treat it with, in certain ways, and he would use a very graphic arts-based technique of projecting different pieces of photographs onto. I can't explain how he actually did it, because the way you typically make lines on Intaglio is you put a ground on it. It's called ball ground. Mm-hmm. It's a stuff that's like waxy stuff that when you heat it, it melts.
Right.
And you put your plate on the stove on the heat source, and you take this ground and heat it, and you smear it all over the plate. You cover the plate with it, and then when it cools off, it's hard, protects the plate, and you take some sort of engraving tool and you scratch your drawing through that wax. And where you scratch the wax off and then put it in the acid, that's what gets etched. Now, the way he did the photographic is, I just can't remember exactly the technique that he followed, but he taught me how to do it, and I used to have one hanging here that I did of me and my kids. I gave it to my daughter. I took it to her in June. But this little plate right here is not that process.
Right.
But I did experiment with it. I used his recipes, his little strategies, his secrets, sort of, and I was somewhat successful.
Right.
But it kind of like the plate was like it wasn't. I didn't have control of it.
Right. You didn't strike your fancy, huh?
Well, it turned out actually pretty good.
Oh.
But it was only by accident. And when Ken saw it, we had these critiques at the end of a class.
Right.
You bring your work you've been working on all quarter, and all the students, we sit around in a little circle and we put it up there, and everybody gets to talk about it and give you critiques. Oh. And so when I put mine up there to talk about, he was, oh, this is really good. And all of them were like, man, I like the way that just like that shape over there. I said it was all accident.
At least you were honest.
But it turned out fairly good artistically.
Right. Yeah, well.
That happens a lot in art. But I kind of gave it up because it was too process oriented.
Right.
There was too much to it. And Ken did it daily. He was in the studio working on his own personal stuff all the time. And he was, that was in 1980, and he was probably in his 50s then. So, but I didn't really get into that much. But that photo process is what he used. And because he was there, he was a highly sought after professor because of his status in the art world.
Okay. And
so they had him there at the University of Florida, and he was like an idol there.
Yeah, he was famous.
He was famous. He was a famous artist, and so they had him there. And so because of that, a student like myself would come through there, and we're like, man, I want to do what he's doing.
Right. And yeah. So you did it.
And I tried it, and he would try to teach other people how to do it, or he did teach them.
Right.
But some people liked it and some didn't, some with some measure of success, and others would go on to a relief process or lithography or whatever. But just watching him work and seeing his prints, and you can go online, you can Google Ken Kerslake. His prints are all over the place.
All right. That may be something for homework later.
Yeah, check him out. But I called him. I got word. This was before I moved to Atmore. I got word. It was not long before he passed away, and I found out that he was sick. And so I called him, and he actually talked to me.
Wow.
He still lived in Gainesville, Florida, and he remembered me. After I talked to him a few minutes, he said, "Yeah, I remember you."
Wow.
And after all the thousands of students he has through there,
Ooh, that's pretty good. You left a mark on him.
So I just adored him. He was, I mean, it's like he was I wanted to be like him.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of
He was your idol, huh?
Right. But Intaglio is like that.
Mm-hmm.
Intaglio has several different methods that fall under that category.
Mm-hmm.
One is etching.
Right.
Etching is where you use the bath. You carve your line into that ground that I spoke of earlier.
Right.
And then you put it in the acid bath, and the acid eats the line
Lines.
down. When you clean off that wax, that's waxy stuff, then you've got the lines etched into it that you ink. You put ink on it and print
Mm-hmm.
it. Another method is aquatint. Aquatint is where you take the plate, the clean plate,
All right.
and you put it in a little booth that has rosin. It's like pine rosin powder in there.
Okay.
It's a fine powder that's hanging around in there. And you bang on the booth a little bit and get the rosin stirred up inside.
Mm-hmm.
And some people actually have a little air hose. They'll put a little air hose in there
Right.
and blow it, and it stirs up the dust inside that booth.
Mm-hmm.
And when it settles, that dust settles on the plate. These tiny little microscopic dots of rosin settle on the plate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very fragile at that point, so you have to very carefully take it out without breathing on it to blow it off.
I'd probably sneeze right about then.
And then you take that plate, put it on a heat source, and you heat it, and the rosin, those little dots of rosin melt and form these millions of little dots over the surface of the plate.
Awesome.
Then you take that and put it in the acid, and the plate is etched everywhere but where the rosin dots are.
Right. Huh.
And you can do that. You can do that in using different shapes. You see how I explained it. If you wanted like the shape of a flower, you would take those after you heat all the little rosin dots, and they're set. They won't blow off then.
Right.
Then you take and you can paint your shape
Oh.
with some sort of ground.
Mm-hmm.
It protects the plate totally,
Uh-huh.
so that you've got these shapes that just have that texture
Right.
from the rosin dots.
That's-
That's aquatint.
And when I think of aqua, I think water. But that's
Yeah,
not really it, is it?
I don't know why it's called aqua. I don't know why it has that designation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But I'm not even sure why it has the tint on the end. It has probably has something to do with Italian.
Probably so. Can't help it.
But the other one, which is very similar to aquatint, is mezzotint. And mezzotint requires the use of a tool. It's like a rocker tool, and it has these little points on it, like cleats on a shoe,
Right.
on an athletic shoe.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk on the ground with an athletic shoe, it punches these little dots.
Dots, yeah.
Well, this little rocker arm, that's a hand tool, you put it on your plate, and you rock it back and forth, and it digs these little dot holes in your plate.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do the same thing you did with aquatint. You can paint out different shapes, or go back in with a smooth burin. There's the tool called a burin, which is hard metal, smooth, and you can burnish, or burnisher. You can burnish that that edged rough surface. You can burnish it smooth, like I did the edges of those.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's a aquatint, mezzotint, what did I say the first one? Just plain etching.
Plain etching.
There was another one, but I can't recall right now.
Don't ask me.
Oh, there's engraving.
Oh.
Engraving is where you actually use an engraving tool, which is a metal tool. It's very sharp, and the edge of it is cut at a slant, and it's a diamond-shaped engraving tool. And you use that very carefully. You actually engrave into the metal.
Wow.
You cut lines in the metal. And then those lines, of course, take the ink, and that's what's printed. And a similar process is drypoint. Drypoint is not engraving the line, you're just scratching the line with a sharp pointed object.
Really?
And you don't have the ground on it or anything. You're just scratching lines in the plate.
Okay.
And, that's engraving, drypoint, and
Aqua.
and aquatint and mezzotint. Any questions so far?
No.
It's as we talked about before, when you get involved in doing this, you find things that your personality embraces.
Right.
You know, you find something that you like better,
Mm-hmm.
and so you'll start doing just acid bath etchings.
Right.
Or if you really get into that carving with the engraving tool,
Mm-hmm.
you might spend your whole life doing engravings.
Engraving, yeah.
And you
Just whatever
appeals to you.
Focuses on, yeah.
Very few people become adept at doing all the different varieties of it.
Yeah, they usually find their little niche, huh?
Yeah. But that's pretty much the inks are different.
Mm-hmm.
The inks that you use in Intaglio is totally different from the inks you would use in relief.
Right.
That little bottle of ink right there, and it comes in various colors. That's a relief woodblock ink there. But the etching ink is more, I think it's more stable, and unless you can heat the plate.
Okay.
The ink for etching, when I was doing the etchings, you're always moving your plate back and forth from and off the heat, because the heat will make the ink more liquid.
Yeah.
It wipes off faster.
Right.
So if you get a big layer of ink that's not wiping off adequately, you heat it a little bit and then wipe lightly. It'll come off very smoothly.
You learn how to move it off the heat or on the heat or whatever, at what temperature, I guess.
Yeah, you get used to what works and the heat source you're using. We had a big hot plate that's about the size of this desk. It was just a big, like a 3/4 inch piece of steel with flames underneath it, and we would heat that hot plate, and it was evenly heated then, so you could lay your plate on there, and it would be evenly heated for the two different things, inking and putting the ground on.
Okay.
So that just about covers it for the Intaglio. And it's amazingly, we're at the end of our time also.
Really? That went fast.
It did. Yeah. I'm going to have to see if my host, what the requirements are for upload data.
Okay.
You know, what I was thinking, for what I'm able to afford the host cost, I was thinking of 15 or 20 minute episodes twice a month. But I may be able to do more than that once I get established and start seeing
what works.
These 15 or 20 minute episodes that we're doing, it may be less data uploading than what I'm thinking.
Okay. So, we'll learn on that too, right? I said we'll learn that too, right?
Yeah, I did it before. I had that podcasting on motorcycling, and I was using the same company that I'm thinking about using for this. And I kind of got an idea of how much data equates to how many minutes. You know, the minutes of recording, how much data that is.
Okay.
So, but we'll see.
All right.
And
but until then,
we're just going to forge ahead with our. This is like 18 minutes now, so we're just going to keep going.
Okay.
At this rate and see how far along we get. And we may be so bored after about 5 or 6 episodes that
really
we'd rather
bored.
Stay home.
Never.
We might decide we want to stay home and watch Let's Make a Deal or something.
Andy Griffith, come on
Andy
now.
Griffith, yeah. All right, well that's it for today for this episode, all about printmaking with Phil and Amy.
All righty. See you next time.
All right, bye now.
Bye.